Welcome to LinkedUp, Breaking Boundaries in Education, a podcast that focuses on what is happening in education today, connecting everyone to the movers and shakers that are breaking boundaries in the education arena.
Welcome to LinkedUp, Breaking Boundaries in Education. Trying to prevent my LinkedIn scrolling, but when I do, I always find Darren Coxon. He's at the top of the list every time.
Top of the list.
And sometimes I not only get so intrigued with everything he's doing because you are the king of experimentation and you report quite well on it every time. But I also like to see what people are saying in the comments also because everyone else is just as appreciative as well. But you have so many insights from what students are doing and innovations they can do and then challenges that can happen. So Jerri, I'm excited to jump in today with Darren again. This is the second time we've had him.
It's exciting to have him back. And we were talking before the show about vibe coding. So I hope we talk a little bit about that as well.
Yep.
So without further ado, let's just get down to it.
All right, let's go. Let's go. You know, Darren, so there are still so many challenges with AI, and you seem to really be able to pinpoint those and try to find ways to help and solve. And I know that you've been doing so by working with schools directly, looking at ways that they're trying to innovate and addressing the challenges that exist. But then also your vibe coding is helping to address those challenges. So I want to hear all about it.
Thank you for having me back. I really appreciate it. It's nice to see you both.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that interestingly, it's been a while. So, a year and a half or so, I think, since we last spoke. And interestingly, I would say that not a huge amount has actually changed in terms of the students' experience of using AI in a more kind of formal way in schools. I would still say that we're kind of still, I would say, slightly stuck with AI being used as a tool for productivity, for saving time, for planning, resourcing, maybe a bit of assessment or some reporting, that kind of stuff. I liken it to AI outside of the classroom. So, if we kind of think about a sort of staged progression of AI use in schools, we sort of begin like level one, if you like, is like, how can we use AI outside of the fours of the classroom to kind of prepare and get ourselves ready at one side. And then when the pupils produce work, what can we do with that work? But it doesn't kind of happen in the middle. And we're still kind of there at the moment. And that's not necessarily, I'm not saying that's a bad or a good thing. It kind of is what it is. And I think there are a few reasons for that. I think first and foremost, there are still not that many tools which are really suitable for younger students. I think we're seeing more and more, 14, 15, 16, 18, 17, 18-year-olds, that kind of upper, what you would call kind of high school end, we would call it kind of secondary or senior school end. So we're seeing some more use of those tools. I'm just been working with a school in the UK, and quite a lot of the students are using tools like ChatGPT, some of them well to support their learning, some of them less well to write their essays. So we're seeing sort of pockets of use, I think some students using it, but we're not seeing a huge amount of, I think, formal adoption yet with the way students are using the tools. So there's the first reason is the age restrictions, sort of the data protection. We would have GDPR and you obviously COPPA and FERPA in the US. So you've still got those concerns over where the data is going, how it's being processed, who's processing it, how long it's retained for, what's happening to it. Is it being used for AI, training AI models? Is it just being, kept in a database or what have you? So there's still some nervousness, I think, around AI with younger pupils. The fact that it's kind of a black box, you're not really sure, exactly what's happening to that data. So I think there's that kind of nervousness. But I think also there's just a lack of understanding, really, that teachers don't really know how to deploy it with their pupils. They're very worried that it's going to lead to cognitive offloading, that suddenly we're just going to have a bunch of kids who just can't think for themselves because they just offload their thoughts to AI. So I think, if you kind of combine that all together, I still think there's a sort of a fear, really, of bringing it inside the classroom. But the problem with that is that these kids are using these tools already. You know, they're already becoming quite,
Mhm.
not all of them. Some of them still actually feel quite, just don't like AI. They don't trust it. They don't rate it. They'd rather not use it. But I think more and
Right.
more students are using these tools, and they are starting to work the angles and understand how they can be used to, you know, to basically often to shortcut the things they don't want to do often. Either they don't want to do
Well,
because they don't find it interesting, or they don't really understand what they have to do, or they panic because they leave it to the last minute, usual stuff. So I think there's still that
right.
slight negativity around AI, which is actually quite hard to tackle.
Hmm. Well, and I know we've talked about this before, instruction has to change a bit. Always, in a way, we always know that the more that we put students at the center, we make sure that their learning is passion based, is based on
Yeah.
interest. It will make them care. And so
Yeah.
the more that they care, the more that it speaks to them, that they're connected to it, the more that they will drive their learning instead of offloading it because, well, I don't care about this, doesn't have anything to do with me in the real world. So we know that has to change. And I think also you're speaking to the AI literacy and AI citizenship for both
Yeah.
teachers and students. There still is this, not true understanding of what it is, but then also how to use it responsibly and
Yeah.
ethically. And
Yeah. No,
so, I
you're
mean, all
absolutely
that's sort
right.
of talked in.
Yeah. I mean, they look to us, you know, young people look to the adults in the room. That's what they've always done since the beginning of time. And they're
Yeah.
not getting much back. But what they're getting is, I'm a bit too old for this, or it's not really my thing, or I'm not very good with technology. Honestly, when I hear teachers say that, I kind of feel like you're now in the second quarter of the 21st century. You need to get at least a little bit good with technology.
Yeah.
We've had technology in our schools, well, really, if you look back to the calculator in the late 70s, the early 80s, we've kind of had it in schools almost 50 years to one extent or another. Some form of institutional
Right.
education technology. We can't not, we've had the internet for about, best part of now, more than 30 years. But in terms of the internet that we know, about 30 years, it's been kind of, so you can't now keep saying, well, I'm just not very good with technology. We kind of need to get at least a bit good, because the young people that you're working with are looking to you for guidance, and they're looking to you for some sort of way through this. And they're very nervous. They're nervous about the future. They're nervous about jobs. They're nervous about how they can use these tools, whether they're allowed to use these tools, what counts for plagiarism.
Mhm.
They're worried that the essays that they write are going to be called up as, as being written by AI, because the teachers had the bright idea of putting the essay into ChatGPT and saying, did you write this? And ChatGPT, because it's a people pleaser, says, yes, I wrote this. And all of this narrative, this negative narrative around AI in schools is having a direct impact on their confidence as learners. They're feeling I feel when I speak to these kids that they're less confident because they're not quite sure how to use these tools well. They're not sure if they can use them well. They're not sure what they should be learning for the future. So again, this is on us. We can't we can't pass this off. In leadership and teaching right now, this is a really critical time, and it still frustrates me a little bit that I still feel I'm not hearing enough teachers and leaders step up and say, right, we really need to own this.
Right.
Yeah.
And I call it
Yeah.
malpractice when they will not adopt technology.
Yeah.
It really is
Yeah.
malpractice because they're not helping the children for their future.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely right.
Yeah. True. And we have to, we can't do the same wrong things that we've done. There is AI for good and AI for bad. Whether we give
Yeah.
it to them or not, they have it. They see it. They have access to it. If they don't have access to it, they see it. We need to teach them how to differentiate between the AI for good and AI for bad. So whether they're, the whole cheating thing that you mentioned, but also the deep fakes that we're seeing are just insane. And so
Yeah.
just, helping them
Awful.
navigate this world. And I know you've posted about that as well. It's quite
Yeah.
scary. And so we can't just put our head in the sand. We have to address it, and we have to protect them and help them protect themselves. So
Yeah,
it's
you're
really,
right. I mean, the The deepfakes thing is, I mean, Sora for me, there's no place in the world for this tool, in my opinion. I feel very strongly that Sora is a very insidious and deeply dangerous presence and tool. I think OpenAI have moved in entirely the wrong direction. I've now actively boycott all of their products. I feel like they've moved completely in the wrong direction. I'm much more pro. They're not perfect, but I think Google at least are trying to produce tools which have some utility. And yes, they have VO3, and it's not, I mean, it's better in that it's more guardrailed than Sora, but essentially it's doing the same thing. But I think at least, companies like Google, like Anthropic, are trying to, move AI in the direction where it's useful rather than it just being this kind of clickbait, monstrosity that serves humanity no purpose whatsoever. That's anything other than just causing addiction.
Right.
It's destructive. Yes. The addictiveness, it's destructive. And of course, it's a moneymaker. So that's where the problem is. So,
well, I just hope
it's so challenging.
I just hope I hope actually what happens is that they'll start losing money as a result of people basically. And it has definitely felt a movement away from OpenAI in recent weeks and months. More and more people, I think, are questioning their morals and their, the rationale behind the decisions that they're making. And I just maybe if enough people do that, maybe we will start to see a bit of common sense prevailing. I'm not holding out any hope.
Yeah, I know. It really is. It's hard. And so that's why we do need to do our best to get ahead of it as educators. So when you go into schools, what types of innovation, how are you trying to move schools in the right direction and helping them with some of those challenges?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's always a slight challenge around, we have, and I think COVID definitely did this. We either became Microsoft schools or we became Google schools. And I'm not sure whether that's the same in the States, but certainly in the UK and Europe, definitely see and I'd say it's a lot more Microsoft than Google. I think Microsoft just possibly handled COVID better. Maybe Teams was a better product for online delivery. I'm not really sure, but I think more schools came out of COVID as Microsoft Teams schools than they did Google Classroom schools. And again, in my opinion, I think Google are a better tool for schools than Microsoft, I think for many reasons. And so actually, when I'm working with schools, I'm not necessarily saying you need to stop being a Microsoft school and because I mean, that's not really feasible. But there are ways in which they can bring Google inside of the school to work with safely. Because right now, if you look at the sort of tools that Google have available, like Gemini, so there's some good tools within Gemini, like Gems, where you can basically create little chatbots that do a certain function, like a GPT, like ChatGPT's GPT.
Notebook LM.
Notebook LM. Yeah, Notebook LM is a really good tool. There are other tools, AI Studio, which is one of my favorites. It's not a tool which you would give to students to use because actually it's very much an 18 plus tool. It's the tool that developers will use, but it offers for free some incredibly powerful AI tools. We will see, for example, we will expect to see Google Gemini 3 being released in the next few weeks. That will come out in AI Studio first. So we'll actually see Gemini 3, and it literally could be any day now, because when you use Gemini, often you'll get 2 responses. And the reason you get these 2 responses is often one of them will be the new model that they're testing out. It's how they actually sort of test these tools internally, but they also test them, release in dribs and drabs into the user base so that they can get feedback from like real people. So when it comes to innovation, then I tend to be saying, look, you can use Copilot to a certain point, but it will only take you so far. If you want to do some more innovative stuff, you need to be looking at Notebook LM. You need to be looking at Google Gemini. You need to be kind of looking at how you can build tools inside of an app like Google AI Studio, as well as, Suno, text to music, which I always show, as well as the kind of those sorts of more multimedia titles. I often show them. Interestingly, I've started to show schools some of the Chinese models, because if you are getting AI to do stuff for you, but you're not giving it any of your information. So I liken it to if you're taking from AI, it doesn't matter which one you use. If you're giving to AI, you need to be much more careful. So if I'm just taking resources and research and code, and it doesn't really matter. And there are some fantastic tools, like there's a tool called Zed, unbelievable AI. There's a tool
Yeah.
called
I
Kimi.
forgot to mention that. Yes.
Yeah, Kimi, unbelievable. The new Kimi model is basically probably the best model that's available right now, kimi.com. So there are some amazing Quen, there's DeepSeek, which a lot of people know about. So they're actually, what China is producing, Minimax as well, which is another fantastic tool. So there are 4 or 5 really very good AI models that are largely free. You just make sure you don't give any personal information to them and you'll be quite safe. So then also show, for example, how they can use the Z.ai to code websites, which create little previews, and you can share the preview as a web page. So it's those sorts of things. So whenever I'm going into schools to do training, I'll often show them just some kind of really basic sort of vibe, what we call vibe coding, AI coding sort of platforms that they can start to, for free, build little apps and tools and what have you.
Yes, and I
So that's
asked
the goal.
for the show. And so for our listeners, vibe coding's kind of a new term. Can you tell us where that comes from and why it's called vibe coding?
Yeah, so it was kind of January, February time of this year. Andrej Karpathy, who's a very kind of well-known influencer thought leader in the developed computer and AI development world, very brilliant mind and also a very brilliant computer scientist. He tweeted, and he basically tweeted about this new type of coding that he had started to see being developed in the sort of previous 6 months or so, where basically he saw it as being, rather than the developer doing the coding, the developer was working with an AI tool like ChatGPT or Gemini or what have you, or Claude, Anthropic's Claude, and describing what they want, and then AI writes the code. And you're liking that you're kind of going with a vibe. You're sort of going with the flow a little bit. You're seeing where the vibe takes you. Interesting, if you look at the tweet, he was kind of criticizing it. He wasn't, and he's since been on record to criticize it a lot more roundly. So the term vibe coding has always had a slightly negative tone to it. It's like you're just pretending, you're just playing at being a coder. You're not really coding properly. And so actually lots of people, developers, development community, really kind of look down on it. And actually to good, for good reason. I think a lot of the stuff that people do code with AI isn't necessarily very secure, and it probably isn't very good, and it does break, and it is full of bugs. But I've been working a lot over about the last year to basically develop new workflows, which I'm hoping kind of cut down a lot on that and produce a lot more robust applications that I'm hoping we can just continue to develop.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about the workflow? Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've kind of got stages. I was interestingly, a good friend of mine who I'm going to be doing a bit more work with this, because he's also kind of gone down this rabbit hole as well. We were just talking about this earlier on. And it's like you go through an evolution. You might start with a tool. Well, like Jerri, you mentioned just before with the show, a tool like Lovable.
Right.
Or Manus, or there's V0, or there's probably the Firebase Studio. There's probably 6 to 10 of these tools. And basically what they are is you put in a prompt and it will kind of do some stuff in the background, and it will do a bit of code, and it might bring in a very simple database and maybe simple authentication. And it will basically create you a little website, like a web application, and you can host it on their site, or you can download the code and you can host it yourself. So basically it's kind of an entry level. And you've got tools like Claude that does something similar. It will create little web pages. Zed that I was just mentioning. So you kind of start there. That's how most people start. Canva does something called Canva Code, which is actually for schools is pretty good. I have to say, it's a really good, Canva Code is a really good way in, actually. And lots of people speak very highly of it. So you've kind of got that entry level where you put in a prompt and it spits out some code, and then you host that code, or it previews that code, and you think, wow, I've just built a website. I've just built a web page. From there, what you tend to start doing is you tend to start working what we call full stack. So you'll work with a database like Superbase or Firebase, sort of a back-end place to store your data. And then you might work with some authentication so people can sign in and do something with your website and save their work, or whatever it is, that authenticate in, so they've actually got with Google or what have you. But then and then you might use you might start using slightly more advanced tools like Google AI Studio that I've just mentioned. Is actually a really good tool for learning to write longer pieces of code. And you're writing lots of different sorts of code and putting them all together into a platform. So you might have your page, you might have all of the different parts of your page, you might have the link to the back end. So you've got lots of different files, basically. I mean, you might have 30, 40, 50, 100 different files, all of which is kind of speaking to each other, which is basically how developers work. They build an application with a bunch of files. The final stage, which is kind of what I'm now doing, is I'm working with the proper development platforms. So the platforms that the professionals would use, so like VS Code and Cursor, which are called Integrated Development Environment, or IDEs. And basically what this enables you to do is assemble your whole code and all of your files and all of your structure and see the code and being able to kind of edit the code if you want to, and then preview the code. So you've got an environment where you can do all of your development. And what you do is you invite the AI into that environment. So you're working with AI inside of this sort of development environment, whereas previously you would have written the code into that environment. Now the AI is doing the coding for you. And essentially, I was saying to you before, Jerry, essentially what happens is you basically become a project manager. So your role becomes a planner, where you plan very meticulously really meticulously beforehand. I mean, you're literally planning every single tiny bit first. Oh, I mean, you work with AI who helps you with that, but ultimately you're responsible for the planning. And then you're building the platform. It's literally like one brick at a time. So in many respects, it is not vibe coding at all, because you're absolutely not going with the flow. You're building a site or you're building an application. They're very careful and you're testing it and you're making sure it's secure, and you're bringing other AI in to kind of, almost feel like you've got different AIs that are kind of almost criticizing each other and testing each other and making sure. So you can work with agents, so they're basically, one agent might build the site and the other agent might then come in to quality assure the code and make sure it does pass all of the tests.
Right.
So that's that. In that way, you can then start to build, genuinely full on, full stack, very sophisticated, multi-level web applications. And so that's kind of where I'm working now.
Yes. And so yours is beyond vibe coding.
Beyond the vibe, Jerry.
You've gotten that point.
Beyond the vibe. Yes.
I've called it AI. It's a boring title, but I must want it to be boring. I just call it AI assisted development. That's just what I call it.
Yes.
Yeah. But it's a gateway, right? Is vibe coding allows for that first step. And I see that it's a great opportunity for kids to do in school. Like now we're moving to the innovation that we can do with AI, giving them the tools where they don't normally get to, they're not learning in middle school and high school how to code. Well, they can do basic code, right? But now you're giving them the opportunity to explore and create in this guided kind of scenario. And then again, moving beyond the, typical chat GPT stuff, right? So now we're really getting into this opportunity for them to create something from, their imagination. And having that guide that, in the vibe that they're using it in, that vibe coding. But now kids who kind of get into it more, a little bit more experience, they can kind of go beyond the vibe, which is what you are doing, to actually create solutions for education. Yeah. How did you kind of roll into that? How did this happen?
Good question. I guess like a lot of people, I saw people doing it, YouTube, TikTok, that kind of thing. You think, I'd quite like to have a play with that. And then, then Claude will release a platform which enables you to preview the code and share the code. So you're seeing instantly the moment the code is written, you're seeing the result. Yes. And, when you look back and you think it was super basic, but it's a really good place to start, because you suddenly think, hang on, so I can just describe in natural language what I want. And then it gives me, and then I look at what it gives me, and I can go back and say, no, it's not quite right. So the colors I don't like the font. Can you make the font more formal? It's just can you do this? And so, and this, in some respects, even now with the way I'm using these IDEs, these kind of integrated development environments, I'm still doing broadly the same thing. So, I will set it off. I will plan out a piece of work with lots and lots of detail, and it will then execute on that task. And then I'll look to see what it's done, and I'll say, no, it's not quite right. You've not quite nailed this. You need to kind of this, or it just simply doesn't work. I mean, you open it and there's basically there's a bug and it doesn't open or whatever. And so there is still a lot of, and so I am absolutely using natural language and sometimes getting quite frustrated. No, that's not what I asked. Do it again. No, do it again. So it's a little bit like, again, you're orchestrating the AIs, and you also, I mentioned earlier on just before the show that it's like you're project managing the world's most brilliant coder who's a complete amnesiac. Like completely, I mean, literally has the memory of a goldfish, because just the way in which the problem that we've got, particularly I use Claude. So I use Claude Code. That's the only tool that I use. For me, it's the only one that's worth using. I mean, there are other people who prefer OpenAI, ChatGPT, Codex, it's called, but I just am a big fan of Claude Code. But it has a very small memory. And it's even smaller when you're coding. And the reason is it sort of front loads your chat with a lot of context. So it draws in lots and lots. So even before you start coding, its kind of memory's already kind of half full. And so it's always, so you have to work in a very particular way to maximize it. So you have to, again, plan everything. We've moved away. So you can probably remember back in the day, we talked about prompt engineering.
Right.
When we code, it's context engineering. So I'm not writing sophisticated prompt at all. I will literally say, I will call up an agent who has a particular role, and I will say, read this file and then execute. Because it's the file that has the context that the agent needs to read in order to do the job. So now it's less about me writing clever instructions, and it's a lot more about planning the context in advance so that when the agent, the AI coder does the coding, it has all of the context it needs. And that context fits into what are called a series of stories. I mean, it uses agile product development cycle. So basically what happens is you have a series of stories, and the stories link together sequentially into a series of epics. So it's like epics are the chapters in a book, and the stories are kind of the sections within the chapter. But the whole thing has a narrative flow. And you have to get that locked down first. And once you've got that locked down, actually, the whole development cycle works, because the AI doesn't need to know anything that's happened before, and it doesn't need to know anything that's going to happen later. It only needs to know this is the stuff that you do. And actually then it works really well. So I think, again, it's about having an understanding broadly of the architecture of development, but actually it's much, much more about understanding how to leverage these tools and how to work with their limitations to still get you what you want at the end while dealing with a bunch of amnesiacs.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of micromanaging as a project manager.
Yes, huge amount. I've become a huge micromanager.
Yeah. So, wow. Now, can you tell us a little bit about your project and what you're doing and how it will solve the challenges?
I've got a bunch of them. So I literally just been working one this afternoon for one of the big public schools in England, private schools in England. And it's an agentic team. And the agents will support pupils with business project, a startup. So imagine literally like you've got a team of experts around you. So a CEO, a CTO, a CFO, a CMO, an operations director. So you basically got lots of experts, and you can call on those experts within one chat. And they can literally call up by name, and the agent will appear and with the icon and the name. And each one of these agents has a context. Okay. So basically what it is, it's a series of 5 different personality contexts with an orchestration kind of framework. So basically there's like if you can imagine, it's like 5 AI personalities plus another AI that's able to pick each one of those. So it's kind of almost like 2 levels of AI, if you like. So that's one project. So basically, and I've just managed to finally get it working this afternoon. It's actually working well. So they're going to start using that this week in the school to help them with their business studies project. Okay. There's another one I'm doing, which is I've been building for quite, and that's within a platform called ClassForge. And that, again, is everything I'm doing is pilot. Nothing's production level. I'm not selling anything. I'm literally it's all big experiments right now. The other one I've just finished building is a new note-taking app with an AI companion. So it's kind of like Notion, very simplified version of Notion, which essentially enables you to just be taking notes and organizing your notes. But the AI is trained on your notes. So when you query AI, the AI has kind of read what you've done, and it's able to then develop it and expand on it. And, and so I can see that potentially be quite useful in schools, because you could have all your pupil work in a folder, and it can kind of support maybe assessment because it's kind of read all of the work in the folder. So the idea of AI working inside of documents is another one. There are a few others. I mean, I'm now building a new platform for my training business. So I'm about to start basically doing training videos, showing people how to do what I'm talking about. So how to build with AI. And I'm building a platform to host the courses, because I don't want to be paying fortune for Kajabi or Podia, or, they're so expensive. And so I'm thinking I can just build my own. So I'm now actually, as well as building the course and recording the courses, which is why I've got this kind of all this sort of influencer colors background going on, and my big light that's making my face make me not looking quite so old and tired as I actually am right now. So as well as the recording the contents, I'm also building the site to host the content. And there are 3 or 4 other projects that schools that have reached out to me recently to say, can you help us build X, Y, and Z? So I think there's quite a lot of scope for smaller micro type, rather than like a big, enterprise platform, actually building smaller solutions that may only just target 1 or 2 small things in a school, rather than you having to buy into a platform where you only use 10% of it. Well, why don't we just code the 10%?
Yes, that makes sense.
Yeah. Good point. Even though over the past year or so, what you've been seeing, I think we've been seeing as well, innovation really hasn't gotten there with AI in the classroom yet. We're still kind of navigating how and all the challenges. But this is what I see in the future. This is what I see students being able to do. Let's just build it ourselves. Yeah. That's what I'm looking forward to, where we can get to a point where all of this, it just sounds like you've got all of these ideas and you're just kind of pulling them, or you hit a roadblock. All right, well, let me just build something to solve that. That's where we need students to be. That's what I see AI doing in the classroom. Hopefully next time we have you on. So we'll see where we are.
I think that's absolutely right. Just that note-taking app that I mentioned, the reason I built it is because I was getting frustrated with Notion being over-engineered. For me, it's too much. And I find I struggle with Notion because it's just there are so many features, and I don't like the interface has started to frustrate me, but I really like an app called Obsidian. And I've started to use Obsidian more. It's a really nice tool, and it's well worth looking at. It uses AI extremely well. But there are 1 or 2 features that Obsidian doesn't have. So one feature particularly I really wanted the ability if I'm taking, like in a meeting and I'm taking notes, and there's a particular action that comes out of those notes, I wanted to be able to record that action inside of my notes, but also have it appear in an actions list. So I didn't have to kind of write it in my notes and then copy it. So that's one thing. So basically, there's a particular tool that I can use inside of any notes, where if I choose the action, it writes it up as an action inside my notes, but also at the same time writes it up in a central, that kind of task list. And the other one I really needed that Obsidian doesn't do, not in the free platform anyway, is the ability to publish, basically to turn any notes into a little mini web page. Because when I do training, I like to give all of the prompts and all of the ideas like a worksheet. I want to be able to publish that as a web page. And so I've been able to build that. So definitely I agree with you. It's like it's almost like this platform does this and I really like it. And this platform does this and I really like it. I'm just going to combine them. And I can see that happening in schools. I was just literally just talking to a guy earlier on. He's like, I really need a tool that can help me to, have all of my lessons and my class lists. And then I want to kind of use AI to do this. And I can't find any. So he said, I'm just going to build it. So there are teachers now who have started to suddenly think, I can build this. I don't need. Now, the challenge that we've got with this, and I think this is going to be the next step, is security. So it's data security. Right. It's not having a tool that's full of holes that can be hacked, that can be, that you can have someone steal your data. These are big concerns. And so you need to be very careful when you're coding like this, when you start to evolve and have authentication. So, if you have people authenticating, well, you're capturing data on them. So where is that data going? Do you have the correct agreements in place? Have you done what we call a data protection impact assessment? So it's it's sort of the boring but very important stuff that you have to consider as soon as you start evolving. If you're just coding a little, worksheet generator, it doesn't really matter. It's like a one-off, little tool for kids to use in the class. That's fine. But as soon as you start building actual platforms and applications where people will authenticate in and will be saving some of their own personal data, that's when you have to start being quite careful about the security aspect. So it's just sort of a word of warning. It's not as easy as just, spinning up these wonderful apps. You really have to be quite careful.
That's such a good point. It is such an important point.
Yesterday, I heard some administrators talking that they were wanting a note-taking app like you were just mentioning, so that when they had their cabinet meetings, they could generate that list and see what had been talked about, and it would pull in information from past cabinet meetings. And then they could also have the to-do list and what has been done and what hasn't. But I can see, too, where security would be a huge issue in this.
Yes.
When you're talking about a cabinet meeting or any kind of meeting within the school
staff.
See where that would.
So actually that's, it's quite interesting you say that, because the other feature that I wanted is exactly that. So the other feature this tool has, which no other tool has right now, is basically end-to-end encryption. So it works like WhatsApp. So what happens is when the user writes their notes at their end, there's an encryption key. And so what's recorded in the database is fully encrypted. And so only the user can actually see. So for example, if you encrypt your notes on my platform, again, this is a tool which is still in development. I'm not quite there yet, but I'm quite keen to so I'll send it on. Once it's ready to go, you can certainly have a play. I can see this actually being quite useful, because if you write very confidential notes into any other tool, to be honest with you, so Notion or Obsidian or notes inside of your iPhone, that's going to a database and someone can potentially read those notes. Whereas what I've done with my app is actually, if I go into the back end and I look at the notes, it's all just complete gobbledygook. It's just code, because it's been encrypted on your, what we call client side. So it's been encrypted on your end, which stops that. So again, it's these sorts of, I think, things I'm thinking. Actually, I've always been very nervous about writing notes into any online note taker. So what can I do about it? So basically what I can do about it is like WhatsApp works, I can encrypt those notes at my end. So the danger is if you lose your password, then you've lost your notes, but then that's on you. If it's very secure encryption, then basically you have to have an encryption part. It's a little bit like crypto, works in a very similar way as crypto, actually, in terms of how it encrypts. If you lose your unlock key in your cryptocurrency vault, you've lost that crypto forever. That's gone. So there is a bit of a trade-off. But if you're happy to take that trade-off, actually, it's going to offer you a huge, for things like exactly what you're saying, Jerri, actually, the taking very confidential minutes. You don't want anyone to have access to those minutes anywhere.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
And it sounds like it's a need from what I was hearing yesterday. So, yeah.
Oh, well, I will once it's ready, I'll send it on to you, Jerri. And if people want to test it, I'll be very happy to get their feedback.
Okay. All right.
There you
Sounds
go. There you
fantastic.
go.
This has been so enlightening.
Amazing.
Yes.
I know. I mean, AI came on so fast. What do we do? How do we manage this? Some people have kind of settled, got their footing, but there's kind of like this, okay, what now? And what you're describing is what's next.
Yeah.
So
The next.
with the challenges that are there still need to work through, but that's what we're looking for. The creation, the innovation, that's what it's going to do for us. And what you are elbows, you're rolling up your sleeves and you're in it. So, and I love hearing all about it. What I think I love the most is when you get frustrated and you kind of go into LinkedIn and you're complaining about things. I like to hear that. You've got to give warnings for everybody. Don't forget to do this when you're trying to do this. So those are really fun. And again,
my mistakes.
I love when but I love that. I mean, it's so important to share because, people are trying to learn too. And a lot of people kind of just don't do anything because they get afraid of all of that. But when you are showing the risk taking that you're doing, I think it helps others to explore and learn as well. Yeah. And so I just learn from you every day. And I still you mentioned very early on, Pi is one of the first. Remember Pi?
Oh, yes. Gosh, that's a blast from the past.
It is a blast from the past because whoever was building it went on to, I think,
Inflection.
OpenAI.
No, so it was Mustafa
That's what it was.
Suleiman, and it was Mustafa Suleiman and Reid Hoffman. So it's Inflection. They've both since left, and Mustafa Suleiman's obviously working. We're now working head of AI at Microsoft. But no, that was a spin-off. It was a spin-off from Google DeepMind. So it was Mustafa Suleiman who worked with Demis Hassabis at Google DeepMind, then left there and founded Inflection.
So I don't think it's updated I think it's like data from like 2023, maybe, I'm not sure, but I still use it for certain things. It's really, I guess I was also surprised when people were so surprised at how AI can be so conversational just in the past, so once I thought, well, that's what it's all about because that's what Pi is. Pi is super conversational.
Yep.
I use it for gardening. I use it for that sort of thing. Yeah. So I still use it once in a while. I like the way it behaves. Yeah. So continue to teach us all. We love hearing from you.
Thank you, Jamie.
Yes,
No,
well,
pleasure.
happy one again next year.
I'm sure things will be even more interesting in a year or so's time.
That's right.
Yes, I look forward to it. I think everything you've described now, which is outside of the box for most of us, I think is going to be the norm, hopefully getting there at least. And that's I want to see the innovation class.
You'll all be inside the box soon enough.
Thank you for listening. And if you would like to stay linked up, be sure to follow us on Apple and Spotify and subscribe to us on YouTube.